pen.
Kevin, say hello, Kevin.
Hello everybody.
What car are we in, Kevin?
We are in my...
Wait a minute, please.
hello Joel.
Start again, Kevin. Say hello.
Hello everybody.
We are in a...
1990 Fiat Uno Turbo.
And it's not standard.
No, this is actually highly modified, okay?
I bet this thing battles a bit of traction, eh?
So she runs a Quaife LS. So it does get the power down nicely, and even at 125 kilowatts, it still runs well, you know?
Yeah. Obviously it's been modified, because I haven't found one standard Uno Turbo.
No, this is modified, yes. It's not running high boost, it's around the 0.8 bar, and it's running 125 kilowatts on the wheels. It's not, I mean, a lot of Uno Turbos make a lot more power than that, but I mean, like I said, I want longevity out of the car,
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
sure.
Yeah, strap in, as they say.
So how long have you had this car for?
I think about 12 years, and then I drove it around a little bit first and suddenly realized that it needed some work, so I garaged it and pulled it apart. This car was in rebuild phase for about 6.5, 7 years.
So who did the whole mods for you?
Back in the early 90s, there was a company in Pretoria called RSB Auto Design, and it was owned by a guy called Rudy. So I went and I dug him up out of the archives, and I asked him to build the motor for me. He did a lot of the fabrication work on the car, and he built the engine for me. He put the Motec in, he tuned everything.
So in the 90s, I remember like there was reports that the kids were like busy killing themselves in these things. They oversaw the brakes.
When I bought my first one, I'd never driven in a car that accelerated like that before, and I thought the thing was invincible. And I had a dice with a Opel down DF Milan, which is Bayers now or something. When I stood on the brake pedal, the car wouldn't stop. Overheat these brakes and that's it, you're done. The car's not going to stop. And that's exactly what you were saying. Guys were doing modifications because it's very easy to make them go quicker.
Yeah.
But they don't stop well. So like I said, this is running 4-pot calipers with really big discs. I have to put 16-inch wheels on to get the brakes behind the wheels. But besides that, it's steel braided hoses everywhere. So I'm going to back off, there's 160, but here's the brakes, John.
Jesus.
So, you know, it stops well. Eh?
Yeah, it brakes.
Brakes.
A brake's better than an Uno.
How many Unos did you have, Joel?
3.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Ask me if they were standard.
I don't have to ask, I know they weren't.
So cool.
Even these, I had them custom made and brought in. They're stainless steel. Obviously you can see all the chrome work. OMP strut brace. My mate brought this back in his suitcase from the UK for me. This I imported from the UK as well. The clutch reservoir is typically a plastic thing, and the rubber is always leaking, so you generally have brake fluid everywhere that's eating the paint away. Down at the back over there is the Motec map sensor. Right at the back, runs off a vacuum distribution block over here. It runs a full TPS now, that's from a Kia. 380cc Denso injectors. I couldn't get the original heat shield back in, so I brought this stuff in from Australia. Distributor, as you can see, is gone. There's the coil pack down there. It runs a 60-2, the trigger wheel's bolted to the crank pulley. Rudy fabricated this over here, which is another sensor that picks up the cam. You can run sequential injection, but we run wasted spark. The head, I took it to Funnelunda. They set the shims for me. They then flowed the head. They did the valves. They did 3-angle valve seats and swirled the back of the valves. Technology in that combustion chamber is so old.
Yeah.
Nobody worried about hotspots and all that type of stuff. So doing that type of thing just reduces the chances of detonation.
Yeah.
And then I also run water meth as well. The side effect obviously is added performance, but I did it as a safety measure to just cool down the charge, also to prevent detonation, because the fuel that we get, you might pump in 95, it's not to say that you're going to get 95 all the time, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's just a safety precaution for me.
So is the bottom end forged?
No,
stock,
stock crank, stock rods. Just the pistons are forged, and we did that just because they can take a little bit more punishment than standard pistons can. So if something isn't quite right, the chances of melting a piston are a little bit less. Not to say that it won't happen, but it's a little bit less. They can take a little bit more punishment. I prefer to run the stock cam. The power delivery is really nice between the rev range that it operates in. So all the pretty stuff I did, all the chroming and all the rest of it, but the fabrication, the motor build, that was all Rudy from RSB. They did what they called a provocation conversion on the thing, and when I got this one and I knew that I needed to build the motor, I couldn't think of anybody else to build it for me, so I went and found Rudy. And I asked him to help me with the project. Stage 1 was provocation, then you got turbinator, and then you got what he called the Abarth conversion. This is more than turbinator, but I don't like the word. I don't like the word.
Say it again.
Turbinator. It sounds horrible.
Say it again.
Turbonator.
Say it with a deep voice.
Turbonator.
Where's Rudy now? Is he still around?
He is. So this is his new company. It's called Concept 1.
Hi, I'm Rudy Balzer, owner of Concept 1. In the 90s, I used to own RSB Auto Design, where we built the meanest Uno turbos.
Rudy has been fiddling with us. If I remember correctly, the car caught fire. The engine bay was burnt out, and then he sorted it out, sprayed it. That's where all the color coding comes from inside here. Years have gone by. Charles brought the car back. There was an ECU problem and a serious wiring problem. So Rudy's busy fitting I think it's a power mods into this. This is evil, really. This motor, I think, was built by a guy in Cape Town called Carl. But what's been done to it, I don't know. I don't think anything is standard anymore.
There's things we know and there's things we don't know. We knew some stuff, like the head's done, it's got a different cam, it's got the forged internals, all that kind of stuff. I know the motor is blueprinted, everything's balanced to higher than factory spec. But there's a couple of things, like the recipe for Coke or KFC. You don't need to know what's in it to enjoy it. This has got a TD4HL 16T. No, it's a Mitsubishi turbo.
Okay.
But what I mean is its application is typically Volvo, not in road car trim. It would be a Volvo.
Volvo.
Like a S40,
Okay. You've had a terrible experience racing an 850R with your Uno.
Yes. When I bought my first Uno Turbo in '95, I think the car had something like 6,000 k's on the clock, and I thought it was invincible. I thought there was nothing on the road to catch me. And I lined up next to a Volvo. I didn't know what it was. It was just a Volvo on Republic Road.
850R.
It was an 850R. I didn't know what an 850R was.
Was it a sedan or a wagon?
Sedan. And the light went green and I pulled away, and it was tires and smoke and whatever. And before I was even out of first gear, the Volvo was about 2 car lengths in front of me. I'm like, what was that?
So what's Concept 1 about?
Well, Concept 1 was originally just, I started building race cars and doing harnesses, mainly ECUs and harnesses for race cars, and that's where it started. And then when COVID came, there was no racing, so then I just started thinking of just working on normal cars, the road cars again in between, and that's what I've been doing. So the name just kept staying the same. Still do race cars, I still do harnesses and that sort of thing. Group N was a car which you could drive around during the week, and on the weekend put the other tires on, change the camber, and race it. That's what Group N was about. Yeah. People used to race their road cars.
Yeah. I mean, you go back to the dealerships, they would say whatever won the races on the weekend, those were the cars that were selling on Monday,
Those were the magical days, huh?
Yeah, they were affordable racing then. I mean, look how many cars used to race in Group N. I mean, those jumbo Golfs. You used to see those guys driving around in the road with the numbers and the stickers and everything on the roll cage in it. Comes race day, change the tires and they go and race it.
What was your event budget for that Uno?
I don't remember. It wasn't expensive, eh? Tires, maybe if you had to go in a away race, the hotel costs and that sort of thing, the transport costs.
How did you guys do?
We didn't too badly. We were busy trying to get the car developed and get it quicker and quicker. Look, we were moved from Class C to Class B straight away. So obviously it was quick. And we were trying to get quicker in Class B. We tried bigger wheels. We went to a 50-inch wheel, which never worked. 40-inch was the best.
Why didn't you put a provocation stick or a Terminator stick and move up to Class A?
No, you weren't allowed to do that. That was the problem. We would have, I'm sure, but you weren't allowed to do that. We ran stock turbochargers on those things there. I needed one Uno turbo because Martinez Breers used to race golf, and he decided he's going to try a Uno turbo, and then they were still in Class C. But within the first 2 races, it was too quick, so they moved it up to Class B. So we ended up racing it in Class B. And the only reason the car was quick is because we improved the braking and the suspension. That was it.
Boost-wise, what boost were you running?
1 bar, 1.1 bar.
Was that allowed?
Look, what homologation says overboost is 1.1 bar. So overboost means that's the maximum boost. But there's no such thing as overboost in a turbo. It's not like the new cars. The new cars have got an overboost and then they come down again. But on the Uno Turbo it wasn't like that. But the homologation said overboost 1.1 bar. So that's where we ran it.
Did anyone check?
Yeah, they did check.
Is it?
They had a little box in the car which is like a detent. So it was sealed. And then after the race, you could open it. It would just show you like a little mechanical gauge, and we used to push a needle up to the maximum boost you went to.
So you couldn't cheat?
You could cheat. You could cheat with boost.
Yeah.
If you wanted to.
So can we touch on that?
Yeah. So what you could do is, where the pipe going to the detent box, you would just with a knife put a slit in there. So then what would happen was that it would bleed air out of that slit, but the box would still read the 1.1 bar boost, even though you were going to maybe 1.2 or 1.4 bar. But it would make no difference because, after 1.2, 1.3 bar, it's pointless. You got no traction anymore. So you would actually be slower if you boosted more.
Did you have an overboost button?
No, nothing. You weren't allowed any of that in Group N. Group N, you had to run all your seats in the car. The driver's seat could still remain as a racing seat, but the rest of the seats had to stay in the car. Could be a roll cage in.
Everything.
Brakes had to be the standard setup. Springs the standard setup. Shocks were free, so you could do anything with the shocks, but you couldn't run a coil.
Did you do anything fancy to the brakes?
Yes.
Like what?
Well, what we did was we ran the cheapest brake disc was actually an Alpha brake disc. And what we used to do, we used to run it for a practice session, take them off, skim them, and then the rims we sandblasted them, took all the paint off, so the rim acted as like a heat sink to suck out heat out of the brake.
But I think the big trick was the ceramic paste.
Yeah, we had a heat
between
transfer
the rim face
paste
and the disc, so it was a heat transfer. So it would suck the heat out of the disc, and the rim became the heat sink.
Because you weren't allowed to put a bigger disc on the car.
They didn't check for the paste?
Didn't matter.
No, it didn't matter. You were allowed to do that.
Oh, were you?
The trick was as soon as you paint a car's rim, it insulates it from the disc, you see. So if you sandblasted, it's like a big heat sink, so it just sucked all the heat out of the disc.
Oh.
It was on Martinez Breers, who was an engineer actually. He was pretty clever with that idea. That was his idea. And even the shock absorbers were free. So what we did was we drilled holes we bought a set of built-in shocks, and we drilled holes into the thing, and we put a bypass valve in it. So you could actually adjust the amount of bypass in the shock absorber with a little tap, like an off-road shock absorber works, and that made the car handle brilliantly.
Did you change turbo wheels?
No. You know what?
Look into my eyes.
Never. You know what happened was when the first race that we did well in, they made us strip. Morris Rosenberg at that stage was still he used to be in charge of that sort of thing, and they said no, we need to strip those turbos because the previous guys were definitely cheating, because they straight away said we know exactly what you're doing. You've got a bigger wheel in the turbo. And we'd been sponsored by turbochargers in Jet Park, turbos, you see, and they stripped the turbo. It was a stock wheel. You didn't need to do that because the power was more than enough.
There was enough power. You just car just didn't handle.
The handling and the brakes were the
handling
problem.
and the brakes out.
Putting a bigger wheel on. I don't know what you see. Nissan didn't want the Unos to beat the Sentras at that time. I think that's what I think the problem was. And Nissan were behind stopping that car from racing. So they said no, they'll give Martinez Breers a Sentra to race if he stopped racing the Uno Turbo. Because look, Nissan and Fiat were built by the same place in what was it? Automotive Works in Pretoria, I think it was.
Roslyn.
In Roslyn, yeah. And they obviously didn't want an Uno to be quicker than a Sentra.
So the Unos came in and they were made under license.
Automakers was the
Automakers,
company,
yeah.
yes.
So they were made by Nissan. But now you've got a call it a sub-brand, if you would, made by that company that's beating their cars, and they didn't smock that.
The Peter Lance cars, and was that the factory Unos?
Yeah, they were factory Unos.
And what were you guys?
We bought an Uno, normal road Uno. We
Independent.
bought an road Uno, stripped it down, put a roll
How
cage
did
in
you guys
it.
compare to them?
Well, the cars handled better, so the lap times were better.
And
I think the mistake those people made at the time is they concentrated on power. They didn't concentrate on handling, and we were on handling and brakes.
How did you do in the season?
We didn't do too badly. We were busy we were getting better and better and better. We were getting closer to the Sentras and what are the other ones, the Sabres.
Sabres, yeah.
And then obviously they sort of put a cap on us. Plus, another thing is the tires. So you would run a road tire, but it was actually molded in a slick compound. All the cars were like that. So you'd buy a tire from, say, Goodyear or Firestone, which had full tread on it. Then you'd take it to Mike O'Sullivan, who would cut off almost all the tread, just leave a little bit of tread on the thing. He had a special machinist to cut the tread off, so it would be closer to a slick. But it was molded in a slick compound. But then there were preferences as well, because what we found out afterwards is that certain guys got a better compound than other guys did. Because we were busy messing around and we loaned a set of tires from a Honda Ballard that were racing. They were also racing in Group N, and we put those Ballard tires on the car, the same size, 14 inch. Our lap times were much quicker. And then we thought, well, something's going on here. Martinez Breers then went to Goodyear and said, listen, what's going on here? How come these tires are better than ours? And then it came out that the compounds weren't all the same. So if you were a factory team, I'm sure you got a better compound than if you were a privateer.
You can just give this to him.
Holy moly.
Oh, Jesus.
That's a blast from the past. Jeez, like it.
Yeah. What year was this? I don't even remember. Huh?
1950. This is 1990.
What?
What memories come
Gee,
back?
plenty of memories. I mean, those were the days when you could afford an engine conversion. Nowadays, I mean, here, brand new engine, $15,200.
Yeah.
And that was a complete in-turbo engine, because I used to buy those things from, well, Nissan was still selling Unos then. That's crazy.
Just look at the list of all the stuff.
Yeah.
So I'd like a limited slip diff from you. Can I buy one today?
You won't get one, you'll have to go to Germany
No.
to get one off here.
It's advertised there, so
You can't get it for this price, that's for sure.
4,900 rand for
Yeah.
a slip diff.
That's what it was.
That won't even cover the shipping now.
Fuel filler cap, 490 rand. You'll never even make that now. There's aluminium caps I used to
Let's
make.
just go back to the LS. What LS was it?
It was a German limited slip diff. So what happened was I went to Germany to visit my grandparents, and the guy who lived next door had an Uno Turbo. It was still a 1300 ones there. And when I drove this car, I thought, yeah, this is a car. I just sort of started. I had a tool making business at the time then as well. I just come out of the army and I thought, yeah, I'm going to buy one of these when I get back to South Africa. Because they were just about to release the Uno in South Africa. I went straight to Martin Jonker Motors and I said, listen, they hadn't even been released yet. I already ordered one. And then the next thing I see these guys driving with Uno Turbos, and I stopped the one guy. I said, where did you buy this car from? And I saw a charcoal one. And the guy said, no, I got it from Martin Jonker. And I said, hey, but listen, I ordered the first one. I was the first guy that ordered this thing. And I was angry. I went to Martin Jonker and they said, yeah, they're waiting for more cars. And I thought, it's bugger that. I went to Arnold Schatz and they had a Ferrari red one there. And I bought it straight away. And then I was still at a tool making business at that time, and I thought, I see in the UK they modify these things. They call them super chips. You see, with a place in the UK. So I ordered a super chip kit from the UK, and I thought it was obviously something to do with, because super chip you'd straight away think it's chip.
Electronic.
Yes, when I get to it was a little brass valve, with a spring and two pipes that you put in your wastegate, and all you just open and close the thing to bleed more air out of the wastegate. And I thought, hey man, this thing is so straightforward. And because I was a tool maker, I started making these things. And then people kept on coming to me and wanting these bleed valves. And then I got one step further. I thought, instead of you getting out of your car every time you want to increase the boost, why not put a solenoid in there with a switch inside the car?
So what did the switch entail?
So the switch disc, basically what the valve did, it actually bled air out of between the actuator and the turbo.
So you preset the
preset the wherever you want. So if you wanted 1 bar of boost, you could preset the boost, and then when you put the switch on, it will go from 0.7 bar where it was to 1 bar,
to
1.2 bar. So that's all it did. So at least you had control by just switching on and off inside the car.
So was that the first big thing?
That was the first thing I did, yes. And then eventually I had such a demand, I actually stopped doing the tool making thing and I started RSB then, because it was just Uno turbos at the time.
What was the following like back then with Unos?
Yeah, it was big. People were crazy and they all wanted to modify their cars. But then every Uno turbo was boosted then, like Annie said before, you put a crowbar in the back and just bend the wastegate.
Actuator bar, yeah.
You go and pay a guy flipping $5,000 to modify your car, and he just leans in there with a crowbar and bends the wastegate, and you've paid a lot of money for some stupid little thing which the guy hasn't even done anything.
What was your modus to make it boost a bit?
Well, the first thing was that bleed valve, which I got from Super Chips in the UK.
How much did that cost you?
I don't remember. It wasn't much. I mean, I think it was about 250 Rand or 300 Rand at the time.
Was that all that you did to the car?
At that time, it was all I did, yeah.
No air filter, no.
No, that was the first thing. Then I put a K&N replacement filter in the box, But then you go one step further. Now take that out, put a cone filter in. Yeah, then the ram air came where I used to cut that hole in the bumper.
Yeah. And then the turbocharger. Then
Eventually everyone was boosting their cars. I thought, I need to go one step further. And I had a friend who organized me a 300 ZX turbo, brand new Nissan 300 ZX turbo. He said, try this turbo. You see, so I took everything out. I actually worked on a Saturday and a Sunday because I knew Sunday night was drags on that highway going towards Hadibespo Dam in Pretoria between the 2 toll gates. They used to, at Sunday nights, they used to basically drag between those 2 toll gates. So I thought, look, I'm gonna get this car ready for that drag. And Saturday, Sunday, I put the turbo in. Sunday afternoon, I went for a drive with the thing, and I actually crapped myself when I checked how much. I went F-gas. I went to the airport, filled the thing full of F-gas, boosted the thing 1.3, 1.4 bar, and I actually cracked myself when I drove the thing. Went to the drags, and I wiped almost everyone out there.
What tyres were you?
It's normal. I had 15-inch wheels on this.
That was the Hocks that you had.
Hockenheims I had on there, yes.
What happened to the red one?
I hit a buck in Zanin. You saw the pictures of that. I was actually visiting my in-laws and I was coming up through a pass in Zanin, and I think I was going a little bit too fast as well.
How feared were the Uno turbos back then? Because I remember if I came across an Uno turbo that had a bit of a drop with a nice fat tailpipe, I know shit was going down.
Yeah.
They were almost a benchmark, man. So anybody who had anything else, Golf 16 valve, Superboss, ISBM, didn't matter what it was. If they lined up if they stopped at the robot next to an Uno Turbo, it was on, because that was the car to beat. Didn't matter what you were driving. Even like with M3s, man.
Because things changed a little bit when the Opel turbos came out. Remember
the TSs? The
TSs came out. Then they started getting quicker than the Unos. And then the Unos started, then you started putting bigger turbos in the Unos again, and they became quicker than the TS did.
And I don't think no possibly 1400 Uno is going to catch me. You seem to know everything.
How do you feel when a 1400 kicks your ass down the strip?
To date, no 1400 has beaten me. No 1400 has beaten me. No 1400 has beaten me. No 1400 has beaten me.
It's difficult to explain because if you compare the Uno Turbo against anything that's available today, I refer to the cars like that as PlayStation cars because that's what they are. You don't do anything. All the electronic gadgetry does it all for you. You just hold your foot on the brake and hold your foot on the throttle and let it go and away you are, But the Uno, you have to drive the car. So there's no aids whatsoever. The only fancy thing you got in there is electric windows. That's not fancy, but that's the only fancy stuff you got in the car. I think when it comes to what Rudy mentioned just now, power to weight, you can take on really expensive high performance cars with an Uno Turbo and walk away on top a lot of the times. If you going against something today which is 4-wheel drive and all the rest of it, you don't really stand a chance anymore. And I mean, you're talking about today's cars that run typical high compression motors. They've got direct injection and they're still turbocharged, so they make immense power. You can't compete with stuff like that because but it's just a driver's car. It is such a lot of fun. It is light, it's nippy, it's nimble, and when it's been modified, it becomes something else. It's not an Uno Turbo anymore. It's just it's a machine, man.
How far can you push a stock motor?
Stop.
Buy it from Fiat and you start fiddling with it. How far can you push that motor?
Kilowatt wise, now it's 165 kilowatts. I wouldn't go more than that. The gearbox isn't weak. The weak point in the gearbox is if you drop the clutch. In other words, if you just rev and drop the clutch. I mean, but a lot of cars, I mean, the older Volkswagens did the same. If you rev the hell out and drop the clutch, the same thing would happen.
You break the box,
spine,
You had a conversion called Provocation back then.
Give that to me, Joel. I want to have a look at it again.
It claimed to give you 110 to 118 kilowatts on the wheels.
110.
What were your mods for that?
For that, that was a different air filter and basically just boosted it. By boosting that thing to, look, you could boost those things to 1 point.
Pump fuel?
No, not pump fuel. You could boost that thing with F-gas. You could boost that thing to 1.5, 1.6 bar. It was fine. And then there was an extra injector as well at those times. So I used to put an extra injector in, but it wasn't just an injector that you disconnected it. I used to buy a thing called a microfueler from a place it was in Sandton, somewhere like that. Perfect Power. They used to sell a little microfueler. We used to connect to your coil, and then obviously with boost and more RPM, it would give extra fuel to the extra injector. Because you were running low on fuel. That was the only problem by boosting it.
Sorry, I remember this. I sat behind the counter in Dion's and I ringed. I want this. I want this. I want this. I want this.
You don't understand what this list did to many Uno Turbo owners and drivers. Was your Provocation conversion the most requested?
Yeah.
Definitely. It was also the most affordable at the time. So just going back to this, offer number 3 was Turbinator, which was 135 to 160 kilowatts. I wanted that, but I didn't want the name. Because for me, that was the ultimate name. That was the name that resonated with so many people. So many people knew what Provocation was. They knew it was an RSB conversion, and they knew it had some oomph.